Hey, it's Lauren with Bargain Bead Box. Today we're going to take a look at half-drilled beads, specifically the ones that came in the March 2024 Seafoam Sunrise collection. And we're going to be gluing an eye pin into the top as a top loop. And one question that we get sometimes is, why would you even want your bead half drilled? Why not just drill it all the way through? And for a lot of shapes, that works perfectly fine. You can just stick it on a head pin and it's easy. But for a shape like this, where you've got this puffed faceted teardrop briolette, the beautiful faceting, the direction that it hangs matters. You don't want it spinning all around on a head pin and sitting on your design like that. You want to show off those beautiful facets. So we're going to glue an eye pin, and that's going to give us a lot of control over which direction this bead faces in your design. So to get started, I've got my faceted half-drilled Amazonite teardrops. And I've got the steel eye pins in antique copper that came in the box as well. I've got a toothpick and a paper plate to help me with my gluing. I've got a pair of wire cutters. And I've got some glue. I'm using E6000 today. You could absolutely use a 2-part jeweler's epoxy as well, or even super glue would probably work for this. So I like E6000. It's a good industrial strength adhesive. So I'm just going to put a little bit on the paper plate. You really don't need much. And stick that lid on as fast as I can so I don't get drip. And I should probably have done this first, but I'm going to cut down an eye pin. If you've got a weird bent one, this is a great time to use it up. And I'm going to cut it a little longer than I think I need so I can trim it to size. I'm going to stick it down in here. And I want the bottom of the loop to connect with the stone, but I also want the bottom of the eye pin to connect inside the bead. And I'm going to trim it just a tiny bit more. But the more connection you get, the more strong and tough the glued bond will be. So let's try this again. And this is also where, if your bead is slightly tiny bit off center, as almost every half drilled bead is, you can also slightly bend your loop with pliers as well. I'm pretty happy with the way that this one looks, so I'm going to go ahead and stick it in the glue, rotate it around a little bit, and then I'm just going to stick it. I'm going to wipe off the tail. E6000 does tend to drip quite a bit. Stick it in here. It's harder when you have to hold it away from your head. There we go. And if you get a lot of extra glue at the top, there we are. That's a nice connection. You can just take your toothpick and kind of clean up around it. And don't be too alarmed if you get a blob of glue somewhere. It's kind of like mascara. It's easier to work with if you just let it dry as a clump, and then you can pull it off later. But again, getting that glue in the connection both at the base of the eye pin and the top of the stone, that's going to be really helpful. And I may end up bending it just a tiny bit there. Okay, and just a thought, if you wanted to, you could absolutely have your eye pin face the other direction, vertical versus horizontal. I'll show you what I mean here. Again, I'm cutting it longer than I think I'm going to need, so I can trim it a tiny bit. You can have your loop go this direction, kind of vertically, if you want to be able to just like string straight onto cord. I'm doing mine more of the horizontal so that I can use it in my earring design that I'm going to be making. So I'm going to trim this just a tiny bit more. See if I did that too much or if it still has good connection at the base of the stone. Yeah, that feels like that's going to sit in there really well. Going to roll it in the glue here, just the very base of it. That little trailing bit off. And I am not going to pretend to be the world's most expert gluer, so you will probably do this much more neatly than I do, and that's going to be awesome because I am not an expert gluer, not an adhesive expert. Here we go. All right. So then you are going to let these dry. And you're going to have some nice components with loops at the top to work with. And that's really all there is to it. With the E6000, you're probably going to want to give it at least an hour to dry, preferably 24 hours to cure before you're working with it too much. And I would not recommend using like a hypo cement for this. I love hypo cement for detail work, but where you've got movement possible, where it's not an exact fit of peg to hole, I like to use a really industrial strength adhesive, again, like a 2-part epoxy or the E6000, which is what I happen to have on hand today. And that's it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know in the comments. I would love to see what you make with these. Again, you can always rotate that loop if you'd rather just be able to string it directly onto cord. Or you can do what I've done and add a top loop. That'll make it easy to put on an earring. Thanks so much for watching, and happy beading!